Get this a little closer. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our January 16th North College Hill City Council meeting. As we always do, we'll stand and start our meeting with prayer, and then we'll do Pledge of Allegiance. God our Father, we are all your servants. We trust in your mercy and love. We trust also in your guidance. Direct the meetings of this Council of North College Hill to make good decisions for all the people who live in our city. Give all the members of this council wisdom and insight to know what is best for our city. Help us to be fair and just in all our decisions. Bless us all to do the very best we can. With your help and guidance, we pray this in your name. Amen. Amen. Call this meeting to order. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I got my name tag. I got my name tag from work. So yeah, I did. It does.
All right, good evening, everyone. Again, this is our January 16th council meeting. And when you're ready, Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Zorb,
Here.
Dewald,
Here.
Dukestein,
Present.
Alexander,
Here.
Bruner, Runner,
Present.
Mr. Davis, Ms. Underwood.
Here.
Okay.
I have not received any word from Mr. Davis. I also must admit that I don't believe I told him that he must contact me to alert me of him not being at a meeting.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald.
with that being said, I move to excuse Mr. Davis from tonight's council meeting.
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Ms. DeWald, second by Ms. Underwood to excuse Mr. Davis. Any discussion?
Mr. President,
Ms. Orb.
so I'm pretty sure that that information is in council rules.
I'm pretty sure it is too, but I did want to be clear that I had not spoken to him about it. All right, call the roll, Mr. Hedger.
Ms. Zorb,
No.
Ms. Dewald,
Yes.
Ms. Dukestein,
Yes.
Ms. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Brunner,
Yes.
Ms. Underwood.
Yes.
Motion passed, 5-1.
Thank you. All right, we have tonight's agenda.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald.
I move to accept the agenda.
Mr. President,
Ms. Orb.
I'll second.
Motion by Ms. DeWald, second by Ms. Zorb to accept tonight's agenda. Any discussion? Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Ms. Zorb,
Yes.
Ms. Dewald,
Yes.
Ms. Dukestein,
Yes.
Ms. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Brunner,
Yes.
Ms. Underwood.
Yes.
Motion passed, 6-0.
Thank you. You have the meeting minutes from our January 2nd meeting.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb.
I have reviewed the minutes, so I don't see anything that needs to be corrected that has not already been discussed. So I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald.
I'll second that.
Motion by Ms. Zorb, second by Ms. DeWald to accept the meeting minutes from January 2nd. Any discussion? Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Ms. Zorb,
Yes.
Ms. Dewald,
Yes.
Ms. Dukestein,
Yes.
Ms. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Brunner,
Yes.
Ms. Underwood.
Yes.
Motion passed, 6-0.
Thank you. Mr. Hedger, do we have any communication tonight?
I have no communications, Mr. President.
Thank you. That'll bring us to council committees, starting with City Community Development and Recreation.
Thank you, Mr. President. On January 8, 2024, for 6:30 p.m., we had a City Community Development and Recreation meeting, and part of the discussion was the welcome letter. Well, I written a demo letter and passed it to the committee to send me the inputs and their ideas to get some feedback on this letter. Well, the letter is looking good, and hopefully it'll be finalized by the next City Community Development and Recreation. And it was a question about how would that be delivered and the cost, and we will be delivering that by hand. And I am thinking that maybe we might go back maybe 9 months or so, just to deliver by hand. And Ms. Clear gave an update on the Recreation Department. She said she was working on the community volunteer software, and she met with the insurance company about the matter. And when this list is implicated, and she get her volunteers, she's thinking about a workshop and an orientation of handbooks. And I'm kind of excited about this one. I think it'll bring a lot of value to the community and a lot of activities that we have in which we need a lot of volunteers. And we had a ReThrive meeting January the 9th, 2024 at 3 p.m. With Ms. Swanberger, and she presented us with a demo project for traffic calming. It's a temporary study. We have to wait till we get the study back, but it's a temporary thing to where we can implement cones or paint the crosswalks, paint the crosswalks, and we get the city's input on this. Is only temporary, and the funding will be coming from the partnership with different funding through the planning and development. So that's just something that we can think about once we get the money for this traffic study. And Ms. DeWalt is on the safety. Mr. Watt is on the safety committee now. Welcome. I got a lot of stuff to talk to you about this traffic calming and things.
Wonderful.
And there's a lot of stuff I want to share with you. And the arbor, the tree board has a new arborist, and they would like people to join their Facebook page on North College Hill Tree Commission 1 on Facebook. And let me see, their meetings are every third Wednesday in the council chambers. And my next city community meeting is, I think it's February 20th, 12th. Let me see.
For 12th
Yes, February 12th.
at 6:30.
2024, 6:30 p.m.
Thank you, Ms. Brunner.
Mr. President,
Ms. Orb.
Ms. Bruner, I appreciate you mentioning the tree board. I would like to point out that we did have a meeting that was scheduled for tomorrow, and we have several members that can't make it tomorrow, so we're going to be rescheduling that one. We just don't have a firm date yet. Right now, we're looking at the 31st. instead of
31st.
tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Budget and Finance.
Budget and Finance met Monday, January 8th at 7:30. We had our 2023 closeout and filing with Hamilton County on the agenda. Administration gave us the feedback of, as they're up to date with the records through the month of November 2023, and we'll be continuing to work to get us up to date, and that the filing for Hamilton County did go forward on time. We talked about our annual salt bid and moved that to council floor for tonight. We talked about the up-and-coming 2024 salary ordinance. We had an update on the splash pad and the city building update. That's this current building that we sit in. And then we went into executive session. Actually, I'm sorry, before that, we talked about new business and covered new and old business. And then we went into executive session to close out. And we were like well past 8:30. It's like 8:46 or something like that. And that's all. We will meet again February 12th at 7:30.
Thank you. Next up, Rules and Public Policy.
Thank you, Mr. President. We haven't met for the month of January as of yet. Our next meeting would be January 22nd at 6:30 p.m.
Thank you. And Public Safety.
We have not yet met. Our next meeting will be January 22nd at 7:30.
Thank you. All right, next is ad hoc reports. If anyone has an ad hoc report.
Mr. President,
Ms. Dukes-Dean.
I'd
Yes,
like to report I attend the school board meetings for North College Hill, and they were approving your wife's knee surgery and her being out on vacation. They just had a lot of like technical business stuff that they were taking care of. The first part of their meeting, they did have a meeting very similar to ours where they redefined responsibilities and duties, and then they went into their regular meeting and they handled some beginning of the year business. And they ran so long that I actually had to leave early, but they were in the middle of talking about a new program that they're considering for the school building, and that is basically a neighborhood health center, but it's centralized out of the school building for it to be accessible to the children. There will be more details to come with that, and then I had to leave out in the middle of that to come here. So that is it.
Thank you. Any other ad hoc reports tonight? Hearing none, we'll move on to the administrative reports. Good evening, Madam Mayor. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't have anything, just to tell everyone to stay warm. But you know that's a given.
I'm writing that down in all caps. Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Anyone have any questions for the mayor tonight? All right, we'll move on to the city administrator's report. Ms. Eke.
Mr. President, we had a pre-construction meeting last week for two upcoming road projects, Prospect Place and Lorraine and Doradine. So we met with the contractors on those. There's some additional coordination that needs to be done because there is a Cincinnati Waterworks component to both of these projects. So there are just a couple others to coordinate with in terms of the timeline, but those projects are kicking off in the very near future. I know you'll all be pleased to hear that. Our rental registrations, which are due January 31st, are continuing to come in. We've had good response to the letters that we sent out a couple of weeks ago. And we've had a lot of calls and a lot of folks coming in regarding the delinquent tax letter that Rita sent out. Once people understand what they're supposed to do and who they need to contact, they seem to be fine with it, but there are a lot of calls on that. But Rita's doing a very good job collecting those delinquent taxes on our behalf. That is all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Ms. Eke. Anyone have any questions for the city administrator? All right,
Mr.
next.
President?
Ms. Orb.
Sorry, I was on delay. Ms. Eke, do you have any type of dollar amount of like a total that Rita is trying to collect?
Off the top of my head, I don't, but I can find out.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is the law director's report. And Mr. Dieters is not here with us this evening, so we'll move to the finance director report. And we do not have that report this evening either. So we'll move to call of members, starting with Ms. Zorb.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have nothing for this evening.
Ms. DeWald.
I have no report.
Ms. Dukestein.
I just want to say, in lieu of all of the cold weather, remind people that they can go to different shelters. There's a link that's on the Hamilton County site that I sent you all in your email that helps you to identify places where you can tell people to go if they happen to be homeless, and just stay warm.
Thank you. Ms. Alexander.
I just wanted to piggyback on that. Just be prayerful for people who are struggling with staying warm. I know we complain about how cold it is, but there's always someone who would love to be in your shoes, and try to reach out to help others, not only in this season, but in other seasons, and be mindful of your pets. I saw, a couple of disturbing things, for people's pets being outside in this weather. And also the children walking to school. North College Hill, has been on a 2-hour delay. But even in that 2-hour delay, seeing children walking with no hats, no gloves, is really disheartening. I want to pull over and give them a ride, but, stranger danger. But just be mindful of just humanity in this season. That's it.
Ms. Brunner?
Well, I agree with everything Ms. Alexander said, and I have nothing to report.
Ms. Underwood?
I have nothing at this time, thank you.
All right, well, Ms. Orb?
I apologize. I did have something to report, and I completely forgot that I did. So,
This is going to cost you $1.
I know, probably two.
For all of us, we all
Yes,
need a
for
dollar.
everybody.
Dang, tally's adding up. So, but you'll like this. So, there is what's called a kind flash that's going to happen in North College Hill. Tomorrow, actually, I'm going to someone's house to put the bags together. And what it is there's going to be bags that has mittens, hats, all that kind of stuff to help keep people warm. And we're just going to stash them through, like, hang them on a telephone pole or hang them on a tree. Just if you're walking down the street and you need a hat and you need gloves, grab it.
Awesome.
And those will be going out the weekend of January 19th through the 21st.
Thank you, Ms. Orb.
Welcome. Was that worth $1?
Yeah, you can keep the $1 you owe me. I can't answer for everyone else. All right, that brings us to remarks from the audience. Mr. Hedger, do we have anyone signed in?
No, Mr. President.
Thank you. We'll move to legislation. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Hedger.
Thank you. Second reading resolution number 1, 2024, a resolution requesting the county auditor to make advance payment of taxes.
Mr. President,
Ms. Orb.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the third reading on Resolution 1, 2024.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald.
I'll second that.
Motion by Ms. Zorb, second by Ms. DeWald, to suspend the third reading on Resolution 1, 2024. Any discussion?
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood.
well, I'm not really sure what this is. I just want to understand, what is this?
Mr. President?
Ms. Zorb.
So this is in advance on the property taxes that, like, I just got my tax bill today. So property taxes that are due to Hamilton County, the city can get an advance on the money that Hamilton County is anticipating getting for those tax dollars. So the city gets the money sooner than they normally would.
All right. Again, motion on the floor to suspend third reading, Resolution 1, 2024 by Ms. Zorb, second by Ms. DeWald. Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Ms. Zorb.
Yes.
Ms. DeWald.
Yes.
Ms. Dukestein.
Yes.
Ms. Alexander.
Yes.
Ms. Brunner.
Yes.
Ms. Underwood.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt Resolution 1, 2024.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald.
I'll second that.
Motion by Ms. Zorb, second by Ms. DeWald to adopt Resolution 1, 2024. Any discussion? Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Ms. Zorb.
Yes.
Ms. DeWald.
Yes.
Ms. Dukestein.
Yes.
Ms. Alexander.
Yes.
Ms. Brunner.
Yes.
Ms. Underwood.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0.
Thank you. Next item of legislation when you're ready.
First reading resolution number 2, 2024, a resolution authorizing participation in the ODOT road salt contracts awarded in 2024 and declaring emergency.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald.
I move to suspend second and third. Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald.
I would just like to remind council that this is very rudimentary, done every year. There's no tricks or loops or anything to have to go through. It's just something that we can wipe off the books and just get it done.
Motion to suspend second, third readings on Resolution 2, 2024 by Ms. DeWald. Need a second.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb?
I know you're not at discussion yet, but I would like to ask Ms. Ike if there's any kind of timeline on this piece of legislation.
Yes, April. I believe it's the 19th. Let me check. Yes, April 19th.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Ms. Dukestein?
I don't know if you guys remember, but we did talk about this in Budget and Finance, and Ms. Ike presented us with this so that it could go through the steps as normal to be approved in time. Just food for thought.
Motion still needs a second. Not hearing a second. Ms. DeWald, would you like to rescind your motion?
Yes.
All right, so motion to suspend second and third reading for Resolution 2, 2024 by Ms. DeWald has been rescinded. That is all we have by way of legislation tonight. Further remarks from the audience is next as it pertains to this legislation. If anybody would like to speak about the legislation we've discussed tonight. All right, we'll move to old business.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald.
I had a conversation with a council member, and I brought it up in, I don't know what meeting it was, about committee nights for council, that we could condense them.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm wondering if council would like to discuss that at this point and give me some ideas about what they think they could do. Not hearing anything, I suggest that we can have all the meetings on one night. And those that have to have a meeting, we can call it ahead of time, and those that don't have the meeting, you don't have to have a meeting. No one says you have to have a meeting 2 nights a month for committee meetings.
Mr. President,
Ms. Dukestein.
Mr. Hedger, would you remind us
Yeah.
of what you spoke on? I think that was the last meeting, right?
Yes.
Because it would have
Yeah.
had to have been because you were present.
Yeah, it was the last meeting. Let me pull up the rules again. But I believe it says there, I have to pull it up again. I don't remember the exact wording.
Mr. President,
Someone else does.
Ms. Zorb.
while he's looking that up, Mr. Hedger, are you looking in rules or in the charter?
Rules.
Because if it's in the rules, we can
Change the
We can
rules.
change
That's why
that
I was
to-
waiting for him
to
to
make
find
our-
it.
Yeah.
If that's what we want to do, we can change the rules. We can't change the charter. That's why I needed to know if that's where it was listed.
It's in the rules.
All right.
Mr. Watt, Mr. President,
Ms. Brunner.
Mr. Watt, were you considering having these meetings just on Mondays, right?
Yeah, either the second or third Monday.
Okay.
Excuse me, second or fourth?
I'm sorry, second or fourth. That would be correct. Thanks for listening.
Okay, second or fourth Monday. So, in these meetings, who goes first? Who has the meeting first on these meetings? Who will go first? Who will go second? And how will it go? And
So-
the,
If that were the case, and I'm just making this up as I go, shooting off the hip, for that, we could probably say the first person that says they need to have a meeting that night would have the first time slot.
okay.
And we would just give each other a half an hour. And if it has to go longer, well, we'll still try to button it up. But that way we don't have to have 2 meetings,
I love it.
you know,
I love it. You spend more time with the
yeah.
family because sometimes it's more to report and sometimes it's less to report. So I know finance has a lot to report. You know, some days are longer and some days aren't. You know, so it's just about getting it organized and how it's going to play out.
Mr. President,
Ms. Dukestein.
are you proposing that we still meet
found
at
it.
6:30?
I mean, we can make up whatever we want at this point in time.
It's a pretty long roll.
Is 6:30 not a good time?
For me, I go to the other meeting,
Okay,
and then, so I would not be able to do any of the other ones because I get here at 7:30. Then my meeting starts at 7:30. We've probably had one time in the entire year with all the extra meetings that my meeting did not take an entire hour. So that would not allow me to serve on two of the meetings, two of the committees. I would never be present for the other one.
That would be the second Monday, right?
Yep.
If it was the fourth Monday, there is no school board.
That's where I was going, thank you.
Anyone else have,
Mr. President,
Mr.
could
President.
you run that comment again, that the fourth Monday is what?
there's no school board meeting on the fourth Monday, it's on the second Monday.
So we can hold that on the fourth, we could hold our committee meetings on the fourth Monday.
Yes, Mr. President.
Ms. Dukestein?
That would also require us, if we are reserving an hour for budget and finance, to either move the meetings up to 6 o'clock or extend them to 9 o'clock.
Shall not interfere with the schedule.
If
for
we're
another standing
designating a half an hour for each.
committee. So it runs an issue here. A standing committee shall not interfere with another schedule.
Anyone who hasn't spoken yet?
Standing committee runs into another
Mr.
meeting.
President?
Committee, the early committee
Ms.
shall
Zorb?
adjourn.
I am certainly not opposed to getting a night off. So I'm all for giving this a shot. And, I mean, if we make it on the fourth Monday, that takes the school board part of the equation out of it. And then, I mean, I don't understand all of the logistics and the fine tuning either, but I'm willing to give it a try.
Not heard from Ms. Underwood or Ms. Alexander.
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood?
I think that sounds like a dandy idea, and I am willing to give that a shot as well.
Ms. Alexander?
I'm willing as well. I just, trying to figure out the logistics on, like I said, the order of it and sticking to the time period. I just don't think a half an hour, I haven't seen a half an hour. That's all. I've never seen a half an hour. So I don't want to cut anyone off, getting this valuable information. Sometimes we just get good into it 20 minutes in. We get to the meat of it then. But I'm not opposed of, just the one night.
So I actually have a thought. I know that's,
Amazing.
well, so look, this is not something we are on any timeline to do. Is this something that maybe Rules and Public Policy should discuss on Monday and come up with a plan to bring back to council? Ms. Underwood, does that sound like a good idea to you?
Absolutely.
Mr. President,
Mr. Hedger?
I will point out that the rule is in 10.4 under committee meetings. So you have that.
Thank
And it
you.
would affect the first paragraph of the last sentence and then the first sentence of the second paragraph. All would need to be changed.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Ms. Nichols?
I was thinking as well, if it's in council rules, they could probably suspend their rules as it pertains to that actual point.
Actually, Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood?
I believe the council rules also give the chair of each committee the discretion to change the date and the time of the committee meeting. So I am not sure what 10.4 says, but I do know that as the chair of a committee, you can, with notice,
Yeah.
change the date and time of a committee meeting. So
And
we
it's
also have
posted.
that as an option as well. If, we can try it out. If it doesn't work, just kind of go back to what we were doing before.
Mr. President?
Mr. Hedger?
That is correct. It would still need to be posted as a special committee meeting. And 10.4, to answer your question, it says that they have to be staggered every other week. So that's why it's different. Yep.
Mr. President,
Ms. Orr.
that's kind of a great segue to the point that we have not finished reviewing council rules as a group. So I don't know if we want to set a special meeting for that, but we do need to finish reviewing those.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald.
on this same topic of the committee meetings, I am relying on past experience. And we did just what Ms. Underwood said. The chair would call a meeting for that particular committee. And if they wanted to piggyback, then you could have two on that night. I don't ever remember that we set a time frame. I just threw a half an hour out there so that we, if we had four, we could squeeze something in. But sometimes we didn't meet for 2 or 3 months on any committee.
If you do that, there's a lot of changes.
So I just, so do we want to schedule a meeting to look at the council rules?
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood.
before we do that, I would like just for everybody to actually look at the council rules. So that when we get to the meeting, we know kind of what we're addressing and we're not sitting there for hours, because I'm not a fan of meetings that last
For hours. Yeah, amen.
I'll second that motion.
Yes, I think we're all in agreement there.
Mr. President,
Ms. Orr.
I'd like to make one more suggestion, and
Yeah.
it's, if that's what we're doing right now, is setting up a time to review council rules, I'd like to propose that we make sure it's after that rules in public policy meeting, so that if we're making updates to that, we can do that all in one fell swoop.
And Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood.
I would like to just give the all committee meeting on one night a try before we change the rules. I want to make sure that it's going to work, that we're going to be able to kind of do what we need to do in a way that we need to do it. So we need to kind of figure that out. I mean, and I'm not trying to drag anything along, you know. Our theme this year, get it done.
Done.
Was there any?
I mean, just looking at the calendar, as we've already had 2 committee meetings this month, your next, I would think, available time to try them all would be the 12th. If we wanted to do a sample, correct? That still doesn't change the fact that if we want to have a special meeting, we would want to have it after the 22nd. Discuss council rules.
29th.
Okay. Mr. President,
We wanted to do it.
Ms. Brunner.
the 12th going into the City Community and Development and Finance Meeting Day, like that's the day we're trying it out.
Nobody has said that yet, but
Oh, okay.
as Ms. Underwood suggested that we do a trial before we change council rules. I mean, we've already had committee meetings for January for budget and community development. So it would make sense that we would try it on the 12th. That's just in my
Okay.
mind.
Mr. President, would that be at 6:30? Or, trying to squeeze it all in?
Ms. Alexander, I don't run committee meetings. Not my call.
That would be discussed for our rules and public policy.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Mr. Hedger.
if you were to do a trial, you would need to suspend the rules to do the trial, because you can't do it currently.
Correct.
Okay.
We
Thank you
can't
for that
have a
I
reminder.
just wanna
trial.
make sure that's clear.
We can't put
understand
the
you want a
cart before the
trial.
horse.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can't do it.
Mr. President,
Ms. Orr.
we will have another council meeting before the 12th. so we'll
Correct,
be
the
able to
5th.
do it then, if
Yes.
that were the path we choose.
Just let me know.
And suspension of those rules is just literally to suspend that entire rule. Not trying to line item anything out. It's just a suspension. Would you say 10.4?
4, yeah, I would just suspend that one.
Yep, okay.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald.
so it would now be an appropriate time to suspend the rules for the February 12th meeting?
We can just suspend that by motion, correct?
Yeah, I have no idea.
I believe so.
I don't know. I gotta look it up.
Yeah, I don't know. Not done any suspending of rules in my tenure,
Okay.
so I'm not sure.
President,
Ms. Zorb?
we could wait until our next meeting when hopefully the law director is here and make sure that we're doing it.
Yeah, I can do some research with him prior as well, so.
There you go.
How about, does that sound good, Ms. Underwood? Or Ms. DeWald?
Mr. President,
Mr. Hedger?
I could answer the question about rescinding council rules. It's
Okay.
in section 1.3, amendment and suspension of council rules. A vote is required to amend, rescind, or adopt by favorable vote of the majority of members of council. The amendment, rescission, adoption of the proposed newly created rule shall go into effect at the next regularly scheduled session of council, except where the charter otherwise provides any rules may be suspended at the meeting of council or a meeting of committee by a favorable vote of at least 2/3 of the members of the committee, members, or members of councils as applicable without debate.
So that didn't help me any. I would be
Right.
more comfortable with having a conversation with the law director prior to that. So if we're going to do it, I would like to do it at the 2-5 meeting. So,
Well said.
but thank you for trying, Mr. Hedger.
You all wrote it, so.
All right, let's get it back in control here.
If there's any other old business?
Yeah, if there's any other old business, is there any other old business?
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald?
on that same night that we discussed the council rules, we also talked about changing the agenda. And I'm wondering if council has put much thought into that, and what are their feelings?
I have not, and I don't recall having that discussion, so I apologize. I really don't remember that.
May I?
A lot of things came up, but go ahead.
Certainly. We talked about removing the finance director because that person is not required to be at a council meeting.
Yes, I do remember that now, sorry.
And then we did discuss the second part where the remarks from the audience were as it pertains to legislation. Chirp, chirp, chirp. Any thoughts?
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood?
I personally don't want to remove the finance director, finance manager, or whatever we're calling that person next year from the agenda. I understand that it hasn't happened in a long time, but I just think the finances of the city is so important. And there are people who watch us out there in TV land. And any information that we can provide about how the city works, how much money we have, what we spend the money on, what we're doing as council, I think that would be helpful. So that's just my 2 cents. I'm not trying to hold anybody's feet to the fire or impeach anybody because they're not coming to meetings, at least not the finance manager. But I would just prefer that we kind of keep that. But as far as the remarks from the audience, I don't think we need to have a bunch of remarks from the audience. I agree with that.
Mr. President,
Ms. Dukestein?
I also agree that the remarks from the audience could be removed. But I also do agree that the budget and finance, the financial manager. And so this is even confusing because we talked about that. It's actually supposed to be manager, but it says director on here. So I think that position or role has kind of vacillated between the two based on the person. But I legitimately believe that upon needed or upon request, that person should be able to come and present for our council meetings, especially around budget. And a large portion of that job role is projection, being able to project things. I just feel like, you know, if that's going to be the person that kind of collaborates and pulls all that information, that budget information together for each next budget year, that we should be hearing from them at least around certain pivotal points in there throughout the year.
Mr. President,
Ms. Alexander?
can I just get some clarity as to why that was suggested to be omitted? Is it because we haven't had anybody
Mr. President?
show up?
Ms. DeWald?
Because according to the charter, the finance director is not required to be at our meetings unless called upon. So, I mean, we could just take it out, and then when we need that person here, that would be Ms. Dukes Dean's responsibility, because she's head of finance, that she could make an announcement.
Request to Mr. Hedger. I'm okay with that.
Mr. President,
Mr. Hedger?
I will say that it is in the rules, so you will need to remove it there.
I'm sorry, what?
It is in the rules for council, so you'll need to
Oh,
amend
the agenda's
the
laid out as in council rules.
Yep.
So we can kill 39 birds with one stone when we have that.
Good deal.
Sorry, I'm talking out of turn.
You are. Thank you for recognizing.
under 7.1.
7.1?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. DeWald, was there any other old business?
No.
Okay, so a new business it had been brought up. Do we need to have a special meeting to review council rules?
Sorry.
Knowing we would want to have the meeting after the 22nd, I did hear, well, I'm looking at the calendar. The 29th is an extra Monday this month if we wanted to try that.
The
29th,
29th
Yes.
of February, you mean?
29th of January,
January.
yes.
Mr. President,
Ms. Dukes Dean?
Ms. Underwood, is there a reason why we can't use the 22nd?
Oh, you mean for the committee of the whole?
Mm-hmm.
No, there's no reason why we couldn't use the 22nd.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb?
I thought we just talked about we're gonna talk about the committee realignment at your meeting. So you're not talking about giving up your meeting, right?
Right. You know what, Ms. Zorb is, Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood?
Ms. Zorb is right. So we probably shouldn't have it on January 22nd. And I would just, please, can we just not have a meeting on the last Monday in January? I really like all of you guys, but I don't want to see you guys on the last Monday in January. Sorry.
How about the 30th? I mean,
Mr. President,
I'm pretty open. Yes, Ms. DeWald?
do you have a lot to do for your 22nd meeting?
Committee.
That we could just kind of make it a quick Cliff Notes thing and then get on with the council rules?
Are you directing that to Ms. Underwood, I assume?
Yes, I am.
Oh, I don't believe no, I just think that we need to talk about the logistics of kind of changing the rules around. That's all. That's what I was, so, I mean, if you want to do that in the, as a committee of the whole meeting, I'm perfectly fine with that as well.
If we keep it on the 22nd?
Yes, absolutely. 2 birds, 1 stone.
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely.
Or
Yes.
39 if you're Miss Zorb.
Well, that kind of makes sense because we're going to be talking about the same thing anyway, right?
Okay.
I'm just going to clarify. Mr. President,
Mr. Hedger.
I'm trying to clarify here. You're going to have a committee of the whole on the same date that you're having normal committees? Is that?
Are you trying to, Mr. President? Is
Ms.
Mr.
Ms.
Hedger telling
Underwood.
us we can't do that?
I'm not saying you can't. I'm just trying to confirm the purpose of having the full council or committee of the whole for that date.
I'm sorry, the purpose,
So the purpose of it is to suspend the council rules, is that?
So,
yes,
let's back
No.
up. So, hang on.
we're going to have to.
So the original, hold on. The original suggestion was we need to have a special meeting. It was not a committee of the whole. A special meeting to finish reviewing the council rules. It was never brought up as a committee of the whole.
Okay.
Not saying it can't be, but original suggestion was a special meeting just to finish reviewing council rules. And then anyone else who had any other changes or ideas, we would bring that up then.
Mr. President.
Mr. Hedger?
Okay. That was, thank you. So to amend or suspend the rules, you can just have it in normal committee meetings as well. It does not have to be a full council to do that. So just, if you were not aware, that's what it states. So you could do it during the normal committee meeting of public safety and rules of public policy.
You're saying suspend in a committee meeting?
You can, it says it here, that you can meetings or meetings of a committee by a favorable vote of at least
We're
two-thirds.
talking about suspending at our next regular council meeting after I've chatted with Mr. Dieters to make sure I understand how all that works.
From what my understanding of the reading of the rules, it says you can do it in committee. So,
Mr. President,
Ms. Orb?
I would need to hear that from Mr. Dieters,
Sure.
because it was always my impression that you are not allowed to take a vote in a committee meeting, and that would require a vote.
I would concur with that, so I,
it says
yeah.
a committee, a meeting of a committee by a favorable vote of at least two-thirds.
And I'd like to remind you that you said we wrote that.
I'm just reading the rules.
Okay.
Maybe you should take a look at that.
Mr.
section.
President,
Ms. Nichols?
you said special meeting. So is this a committee special meeting, or are you doing a council special meeting?
Ms.
That's
Orb,
why-
you brought this up originally.
I have no preference. I don't care. I just want it to be done.
A special meeting typically, sometimes, if it's a council meeting, includes the clerk, and sometimes we come. So that's why I'm trying to get clarity on, is it a committee special meeting, or is it a council special meeting?
And I have no preference as to what it is either. I'm
Mr.
not-
President, if, to Ms. Zorb's point, if it's a committee meeting, you can't vote and/or suspend. If it's a council meeting, then you
So
can.
again, we're not looking to vote or suspend
Okay.
until the 5th at our next regular council meeting.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Mr. Walton?
It says it right there.
I would like to cancel my public safety meeting for January 22nd. That would give us more time to discuss what we need to discuss.
So are we calling a meeting, or is that discussion going to happen in, I mean, you want it to be open to all council members, correct? Ms. Zorb?
Yes.
Mr. President,
Can I throw another option, maybe? What if we call it a work session? Can we do it that way?
Don't
I
that
know,
either.
I'm-
or,
Yeah.
Mr.
Ms.
President,
Underwood?
I would like to invite all of the members of council to the Rules and Public Policy meeting on Monday, January 22nd, 6:30 PM.
That seems like a winner to me.
It's a great invitation.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Underwood.
Yay.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb?
I would like to point out that Mr. Davis is not here and did not hear that invitation.
I
Okay.
will send him a text message or a flare or whatever it is he requires.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and then, Ms. DeWald, you are not having public safety that night,
Correct.
so that all focus can be on rules and public policy. Perfect. Any other new business? That did settle that, correct? We're good? Okay. And then I'm going to work with Mr. Dieters on making sure I understand rule suspension prior to the meeting on the 5th. Making sure we understand how to suspend those rules if that's what council wishes. Any other new business?
Mr. President, yes.
Ms. Underwood.
So the courthouse, the Hamilton County Courthouse, is a very, very old building. However, in order to make the lives of attorneys easier, which I'm sure that some people, don't care about the lives of attorneys, but in order to make the lives of attorneys easier, they have installed these little plugs along in the courtrooms, just kind of, they're just like a big silver box plug on the floor. And I know that we fight about this building all of the time, but I would appreciate having a plug like just right here in front of the table on the floor, just, so I'm not stretching out a long extension cord, because that's my next option. I'm just going to bring the long cord from Home Depot, the orange one, and run it all around the wall or something. So I just think it might be easier, just to kind of have some of those plugs put in here. And before anybody responds to what I just said, I would also like to ask that if whoever responds, don't tell me why we cannot do it. Let's talk about how we can. There we go.
Ms. Underwood? Mr. President,
Ms. Brunner.
Ms. Underwood, what do you mean plugs for plugging in cell phones or laptops and, oh, okay, there is some juice. Okay, so, okay.
Mr. President,
Ms. Orb.
can I ask everyone just look around? Do you see an outlet like to run it? Like if we got a power strip, do you even see a place to even originate power? Because the only power that
Okay,
I see
so-
is right there.
And that wall.
Mr. President,
it?
I don't know how they did it at the courthouse.
But
I
you don't
just
see any around or behind you?
No,
Is that
no,
what I-
not at all. But
Okay.
I know that they did it there, and that building is falling apart all the time. The elevators never work. I mean, just it is. But they managed somehow to get, power strips, or just kind of plug some kind of way. I don't know how they did it. I have no clue. I wouldn't even know who to ask how they did it. I just know that, one day I went into court and we actually had a place to plug in our devices. They didn't update anything else. They just put plugs in front of the tables.
Ms.
So-
Underwood, would it be all right if I committed to you that I'm going to work with Ms. Eke and figure this out?
Thank you.
She seems surprised by that, but we'll figure something out.
Mr. Graves,
I'm good with that.
I'm sorry, Mr. President.
Ms. Orb.
May I help?
Ms. Orb wants to help.
I think I might know a solution or two.
Perfect. That'll work. All right. Any other new business?
Yes, Mr. President.
Ms. DeWald.
I don't know when the appropriate time is. Maybe I should just text the two, but I'd like to have a meeting with our city administrator and the mayor. So, can we set that up after the meeting? Thank you.
You mean just you by yourself, right?
Just me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other new business?
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald.
I move to adjourn.
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood.
I'll second that.
Motion by Ms. DeWald, second by Ms. Underwood to adjourn tonight's meeting. Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Ms. Orb,
Yes.
Mr. Wald,
Yes.
Ms. Dukestein,
Yes.
Ms. Alexander,
Yes.
Ms. Brunner,
Yes.
Ms. Underwood.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.